So tell me, what made you enter public life?
It's a really good question, Juliana. I guess, as a child of post-war migrants to Australia, I saw, I guess, a lot of decisions being made that affected everyday people, but they weren't necessarily decisions that were informed by the experience of everyday people.
Yeah.
And I saw that a lot growing up. And I also grew up in a family that was very community-minded. And I guess, they were leaders in their community, particularly my dad. And I guess, I always had this affinity, to community, an affinity to working alongside other people and being in service.
Yeah.
And then I did a social work degree, which, cemented that when I was quite young. I went into uni straight after high school. So I guess, Juliana, a confluence of personal experience and then my education and, an amazing set of mentors who encouraged me along the way, that they're kind of the range of influences that got me there. I guess it wasn't one single thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But if I told you, Esther, if I asked you to pick up on a particular experience or a particular incident that inspired or challenged you to consider public role, would you have one?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think, I observed, as the CEO of a migrant resource centre back in the late 90s, I observed, I observed people's behaviour in public life up close, and that was, from local government to state government to federal government. And some of that behaviour I didn't feel was befitting for the roles that people held. And I felt that they weren't listening to the needs of the community, and I didn't feel that they were responding in an equitable way. So I guess having seen that and having seen how power could be used for good and not for good, I think that observation and that experience probably did actually force me to consider what role I might be able to play in shifting some of that.
That sounds fantastic, Esther. What were some of the barriers, individual or institutional or personal barriers to public life that you faced?
Oh, wow. Okay. There's lots of barriers. It's a really good question. I think if I take the individual first, it's I guess from within yourself, believing that you can do it and believing that you have a right to exercise power in a public way, and really, a lot of the process that you go through is about coming from within and understanding that, that everybody has a right to participate in a meaningful way, whatever that role is going to be. So I think coming from within first, I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy, where we'll double back and have another think and sort of convince ourselves that maybe we shouldn't, or, somebody else might be better suited. That kind of narrative that sometimes goes on in our heads. I think that forms a barrier in of itself, your own thinking.
Yeah.
I think the institutional barriers are just so, some of them are so, I guess, not as obvious, and they might be quite systemic. And I guess what I had to counter was, established relationships. I had to understand, what those relationships meant. I had to get to know people that, might not have known me very well, or I didn't know very well, and have honest and frank conversations with them about what I felt I could contribute. So you really have to put yourself out there and have other people judge whether they think that you are fit for that.
Yeah.
And some of those people may or may not have your interests at heart. So there's also, established power structures.
The document that we are working with is the Beijing Platform for Action and the SDGs. In that platform, there are 12 critical areas. And one of those critical areas, it says institutional mechanisms for the advancement of women. I love that. But then I want to ask you, because you have been in public life, what public policies or structural decisions have been enablers for you to enter public life?
Well, I think I have benefited from, you know, civil libertarians and feminists and people who have called out inequality in this country. I've been a beneficiary of those people before me. And that's made all the difference, because if I was of my mother's generation, it would have been far less possible for me to enter public life. So there's obviously decisions that have been made along the way that have improved my opportunity. But what concerns me is, I guess, that it's okay to put those policies in place, but what you see at play is that, you know, for example, in my situation, once I held public office in local government, you're kind of on your own, Juliana. You know, the system doesn't have, you know, structured kind of, you know, mentoring or, you know, sort of regular check-ins with people that have more experience. You're really counting on your own networks, your own connections, your own experience and intelligence, and, you know, the kind of networks that you create and others help you create. Yeah. And I was very fortunate that because I came into it later in life, I had an established network of people, and those people, in the most part, they were women. You know, some were political women and some weren't. They helped me. They helped me in very difficult times. They helped me even with my campaigns, because I had to run an internal campaign to get on the local government ticket, and then I had to run a public campaign, and I'd never done anything like that before back in 2012, 8 years ago now. So, you know, it doesn't. So while the policies have shifted, sometimes the practices and the unspoken rules, they don't always support, you know, the right kind of people or a diversity of people to get into public life. And you know, a lot of it is about some people having power and not using it well, and the wrong people not always the right people wanting power. So, you know, I think it's what happens. So you're in, let's assume you're in and you've got a role and you're, you know, a mayor or you're an MP, whatever it is. It's also about what happens after you hold that role. What kind of guidance you get, what kind of advice you get, people supporting you along the way, you supporting other people coming through, particularly women, you know, forming coalitions of women. That happens very informally. It doesn't happen formally at all. So it's really hard if you're a first time, particularly in local government. There's a lot of women over the years who talk about their experience in local government in the same way as me and say, you know, once I got there, I was kind of on my own, and you just sort of, you know, intuitively you feel your way, and you hope you're making the best possible decisions, but you haven't really got a frame of reference. So that can be challenging, Juliana. Mm-hmm.
The fourth question I have for you, Esther, is about mentoring. You've mentioned it a couple of times, and I just want to know, did you have specific mentors on this journey who acted as enablers, and in what way?
Yeah, I did indeed. I've still got a mentor that I've had since I was 20. She was my social work supervisor in my last social work placement, and I got my first job with her help. And she doesn't see herself as a mentor. She always laughs when I say that, but she is still a mentor, and she's still a person I call on, you know, to be a referee, to have lunch with, and try and sort of, when I need to reconnect with my core values and my mission, and sort of try and stay aligned to my vision for what I want to do. I always call on her. And then there's other women and men along the way that have, you know, been able to give you, you know, honest feedback and guidance. I've got two amazing women who have got, you know, political lives, and they really mentored me through my experience in local government. And I probably would have made some decisions that might not have been good decisions if it wasn't for that advice.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, really important. I think it's really important.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you, Esther. My last question. My last question. What advice would you give to a young migrant or refugee woman who would like to enter public life? And so that's first part of that question. What advice would you like to give to a young migrant or refugee woman who would like to enter public life?
Oh, I think it's, you know, believe in yourself. Be clear about your motivations. You know, drive what you want to achieve with a great passion, but have a balance in your life. What I've learned over the years is that probably my life was a little bit skewed towards public life and community life, away from myself and my own joys. So I think, you know, having a balance in our lives, but actually like chasing our dreams with great passion and gusto and believing in ourselves. I also think, you know, finding other people, particularly other women who might be older or have more experience or have a different kind of experience. It doesn't matter if they're not the same background as you or they don't have the same interests as you, but if they have an interest in you and you're curious about their experience, hang on to those people, be open to learning from them and, you know, learning from their journey. But at the end of the day, it's your journey, right? So you can take a whole lot of things from other people, but it's your journey and you have to shape it according to your own needs and what you want to achieve. So yeah, I would say back yourself, believe in yourself, find other like-minded people. You can't do anything alone. You've got to work with other people. It's the only way to get good work done. And also be a good listener and have the capacity to self-reflect. And, you know, if something's not working, have the courage to walk away from it. If it's not working for you and you're not doing your best work and you're not your best self, walk away from it and find the thing that does give you that.
That's amazing. Thank you, Esther. The last question, do you have a message for the next generation of women from culturally diverse communities who are marginalized?
My message would be, we need you. We need your voices. We need your ideas. We need your thoughts. You are Australia. You're in Australia. Australia is yours. This is your Australia. It's not a country that's somebody else's. It's your country. It's our country. We want to hear from you. We want you involved. We want your voices heard and your thoughts represented.